Have you ever thought about earning from podcasting? In this digital age, podcasts are emerging as a popular form of entertainment, education, and inspiration, reaching millions of listeners worldwide. With a variety of topics and styles, there's a podcast for everyone. Successful podcasters have tapped into this potential, turning their passion into profit. The podcast industry is booming, and the financial rewards are substantial. So are you intrigued by the prospect of podcasting as a viable income source? But how exactly does one earn from podcasting? Let's dive into it. Before we dive into the earning aspect, it's important to understand the basics of podcasting. So, what is a podcast? It's a digital audio or video file series where you can delve into a wide range of topics. Think of it as your own personal radio show or a TV series, but with a personal touch. To start a podcast, you don't need an elaborate setup. A basic microphone, headphones, and podcasting software are enough to kickstart your journey. Of course, as you progress, you can invest in higher quality equipment. But the most critical element, your niche. Selection of a particular subject or theme that resonates with you and your potential audience is paramount. It could be anything from entrepreneurship to art to science fiction. The key is to choose a niche you're passionate about and can consistently create engaging content around. Now that you understand the basics, let's move on to how you can start earning. Monetizing your podcast involves several strategies, and today we'll dive into the primary ways you can turn your podcast into a revenue stream. First up, we have sponsorships. This is where a business pays you to promote their product or service on your podcast. It's a win-win situation. They get exposure to your audience, and you get paid. Sponsorships can come in many forms, from a simple mention at the beginning or end of your episodes to a more integrated approach where the product or service is woven into your content. Next is advertising. Similar to sponsorships, ads also provide businesses with a platform to reach your audience. The difference lies in the control you have over the content. With sponsorships, you have more freedom to present the product or service in your style. Whereas with ads, the content is usually provided by the advertiser. Crowdfunding is another popular way to monetize. This involves asking your audience to support your podcast financially, often through platforms like Patreon. In return, you can offer them exclusive content, behind-the-scenes access, or other unique perks. Lastly, you can sell merchandise or services related to your podcast. This could be anything from branded t-shirts to coaching sessions, depending on what resonates with your audience. These are the most common ways to earn from podcasting, but how do you get started? Let's find out in the next scene. Attracting sponsors and advertisers is a crucial step in monetizing your podcast. But how do you go about doing this? Let's break it down. Firstly, you need to have a dedicated listener base. Sponsors and advertisers are interested in reaching as many people as possible. So, the larger your audience, the more attractive you are to potential sponsors. It's not just about quantity though. Quality matters too. Advertisers want to know that your listeners are engaged and that they trust what you have to say. This means it's important to build a strong relationship with your audience and consistently produce high-quality content. Once you've built up your listener base, it's time to create a media kit. This is a document that provides potential sponsors with information about your podcast. It should include details about your show, your audience demographics, and your download statistics. This gives sponsors a clear picture of who they'll be reaching if they choose to advertise with you. Remember to keep your media kit updated as your podcast grows and changes. Now, you might be wondering, how do I find these potential sponsors? This is where podcast advertising networks come in. These networks act as a middleman, connecting podcasters with advertisers. Some well-known networks include Midroll, AdvertiseCast, and Podgrid. By joining a network, you can gain access to a wide range of potential sponsors. However, it's also worth reaching out to companies directly, especially those that your audience might be interested in. One final tip: when you're negotiating with sponsors, don't sell yourself short. Make sure you understand the value of your audience and don't be afraid to ask for what you think your ad space is worth. Once you've attracted sponsors and advertisers, what's next? Besides sponsorships and advertising, there are other ways to earn from your podcast. One of these is through the power of crowdfunding. Crowdfunding is essentially a method of raising capital through the collective efforts of friends, family, and individual supporters. These contributors provide the funds you need to create and maintain your podcast. Platforms like Patreon have made this process more accessible than ever. Patreon allows your most passionate listeners to support your podcast financially on a recurring basis. In return for their patronage, you can offer exclusive content, early access to episodes, or even a shout-out on your show. This model creates a unique opportunity to build a community around your podcast, while also generating a steady income stream. But the opportunities don't stop at crowdfunding. Selling merchandise is another fantastic way to earn from your podcast. Think about it: your podcast logo on a t-shirt, a mug, or a poster. Not only does this provide you with an additional source of income, but it also allows your listeners to show their support in a tangible way. Merchandise can be anything from physical items to digital products or services. For instance, if your podcast focuses on personal development, you might sell an ebook or an online course. If it's a comedy show, perhaps a funny t-shirt or a mug with a catchphrase from your show. The key is to create something that resonates with your audience and complements your podcast content. Remember, the aim here is not just to sell products. It's about building a brand, creating a community, and turning your podcast into a sustainable business. And while it may take time to see significant revenue from these sources, every little helps when you're trying to turn your passion into a paycheck. With these strategies in place, you're well on your way to earning from your podcast. Let's quickly recap the key points discussed in this video. Understanding the basics of podcasting is crucial. It's your foundation. Monetizing strategies are diverse, from sponsorships and ads to crowdfunding and merchandise sales. Attracting sponsors and advertisers requires a strong audience base, and crowdfunding and selling merchandise can further boost your income. Remember, podcasting isn't a get-rich-quick scheme. It's a journey that requires dedication, but the potential rewards are substantial. Podcasting can be a profitable venture if you're willing to put in the time and effort. So, why not give it a shot?